The battlefield was nothing but smoke, fire, and broken metal. Ships had fallen from the sky like burning stars, and the ground shook with the echoes of war. Ethan Hayes, a young human soldier, ran through the ruins with his pulse rifle clutched in his hands. His heart pounded, but not from fear. He had been in battles before. It was the uncertainty that weighed on him. Who was the enemy now? And more importantly, who could he still save? He had been separated from his squad after an explosion scattered them across the ruined valley. Alone, he moved carefully through the broken structures of what had once been an alien outpost. The walls still hummed with strange energy, glowing, faintly in colors he couldn't describe, like light twisted into patterns meant for eyes not human. Ethan pressed his back against a piece of shattered wall and listened. He could hear the distant blasts of weapons, the thunder of machines. But beneath that, something softer. A sound that didn't belong in war, a cry. At first he thought he imagined it. The battlefield often played tricks on the ears. But when he heard it again, faint and trembling, he followed it. His boots crunched over rubble as he moved deeper into the ruins. There, among the collapsed stone and smoking metal, he saw her. A small alien girl, no older than 12 by his guess, lay pinned under debris. Her skin was pale with a faint shimmer, almost silver under the smoky light. Her hair, long and tangled, glowed faintly in the dust. Her eyes were large, golden, and wet with tears. She wore the tattered remains of regal clothing, something far too fine for a battlefield. For a moment, Ethan froze. She wasn't human. She was one of them, the enemy, at least according to the orders he had been given. But the way she reached out with her trembling hand, whispering weakly in a language he didn't fully understand, struck something deep inside him. She wasn't a soldier. She wasn't carrying a weapon. She was just a child. Ethan dropped his rifle and rushed forward. The debris was heavy, but his training gave him strength. He pressed his shoulder under the slab of twisted metal and pushed with all he had. The girl whimpered, her voice cracking, but she didn't move away. She simply watched him with wide, fearful eyes. "Hold on," Ethan muttered, even though she might not understand. "I've got you." With one final shove, the metal gave way, clattering to the ground. Ethan quickly checked her for injuries. A deep cut ran across her side, and her breaths were shallow. She was in pain, weak, and bleeding. He tore a strip from his own uniform and pressed it against her wound. She winced, but she didn't resist. Her hand, trembling, reached up and clutched his wrist as if to say she understood. "You'll be okay," Ethan whispered. "I won't leave you." The sound of approaching footsteps made his stomach tighten. He grabbed his rifle with one hand, holding the girl close with the other. Around the corner appeared 2 armored human soldiers, their faces hidden behind combat helmets. When they saw the alien child in Ethan's arms, they raised their rifles. "Hayes!" one of them shouted. "Drop her! That's the enemy!" "She's a kid!" Ethan shouted back. "She's not human. Orders are clear. Leave her behind." Ethan's jaw clenched. He looked down at the girl, her golden eyes staring at him with fear and hope all at once. He remembered his own little sister back home, safe on Earth, who had once looked at him with the same kind of trust. "No," Ethan said firmly. "She's not the enemy. Not today." Before the other soldiers could argue, a loud explosion rocked the ruins. Smoke filled the air, separating Ethan from them. He didn't waste a second. With the girl cradled in his arms, he sprinted through the broken corridors, weaving through shadows until the voices of his fellow soldiers faded behind him. The girl's breathing was shallow, but she held on. She whispered something in her own tongue, and though Ethan couldn't understand, he knew it was a plea not to let go. He found cover beneath a collapsed archway and checked her wound again. She needed help. Medical help he couldn't provide. "Here." Looking up, Ethan spotted a small alien transport ship, half destroyed but still sparking with life. If he could get her there, maybe she would survive. Step by step, he carried her across the field. Blaster fire rained in the distance, but none struck them. It was as if the chaos of war ignored them, allowing this single, fragile mission to continue. At the ship, he set her down gently and worked to override the hatch. His fingers flew across controls he didn't fully understand, guessing his way through alien symbols until the door hissed open. Inside, the ship smelled of burned wires and strange herbs. He laid the girl on a padded seat and searched for anything. That looked like a med kit. To his relief, he found one, silver tubes and glowing vials inside. He didn't know how to use them properly, but the girl weakly guided his hand to the right one. She pressed the vial against her wound, and it released a soft light that sealed part of the injury. Her breathing eased. Her eyes closed for a moment, but then she opened them again, gazing at him with something he recognized instantly: gratitude. Before Ethan could speak, another figure appeared at the hatch. An alien soldier, taller, armored, and clearly looking for survivors. The soldier's weapon aimed directly at Ethan. Ethan froze, his hand halfway to his rifle. He knew he couldn't win this fight, but then the girl, weak as she was, raised her small hand and called out in her language. Her voice was fragile, yet commanding. The soldier paused. His eyes darted between her and Ethan. Slowly, he lowered his weapon. The soldier said something Ethan couldn't understand, then lifted the girl into his arms with surprising gentleness. But before he turned to leave, the girl looked back at Ethan one last time. Her golden eyes locked with his. She pressed her hand to her chest, then pointed at him. A gesture, a promise. And then she was gone. Ethan stood there, breathing hard, the battlefield still roaring around him. He knew he would, likely never see her again. Maybe she would survive, maybe not. But deep inside, he hoped she would live, because in that brief moment, he had done something not for orders, not for victory, but for what felt truly human, saving someone who needed him. He carried that memory with him, buried deep in his heart, never knowing that years later the girl would return. Not as a child, but as a princess, and she would remember him. Years passed since that day on the battlefield, but Ethan Hayes never forgot the moment he carried that alien girl out of the rubble. Her golden eyes still lingered in his memory, like a candle that refused to go out. Sometimes, when he woke, in the middle of the night, he wondered if she had survived, if her people had healed her, if she had ever spoken of the strange human who risked everything for her. But those were just thoughts buried in the corners of his mind, never shared with anyone else. Now, Ethan lived a quiet life on Earth. The wars were over, at least for him. He had left the military, unwilling to follow more orders that demanded blind hatred toward those he had never truly known. Instead, he worked at a small repair shop in a town near the coast, fixing old machines, hover bikes, and sometimes even discarded relics from the war. His life was simple, maybe even dull to others, but to him, it was peaceful. One evening, as the sky burned orange with the setting sun, Ethan locked up the shop. The town was calm, the streets empty except for the hum of distant traffic. He walked toward his modest home, hands in his pockets, when he noticed something strange on the horizon, a flicker of light, too sharp, too precise to be a star. It moved quickly, then slowed, descending toward the nearby hills. Ethan stopped, in his tracks. His old instincts kicked in. That wasn't a plane. It wasn't human at all. A ship. For a moment, he considered ignoring it. The wars were long behind him, and he wanted no part in them anymore. But something inside urged him forward. Curiosity, maybe, or perhaps fate reminding him that his story wasn't finished. He followed the light into the hills, climbing through the brush until he reached a small clearing. There, hidden among the trees, a sleek alien craft rested on the ground. Its surface gleamed silver, pulsing with lines of light that moved like rivers across its hull. The air around it hummed with quiet energy. Ethan crouched low, his breath steady. He expected armored soldiers, weapons drawn, a hostile greeting. Instead, the hatch of the ship opened slowly and a single figure stepped out. She was tall and graceful, her movements elegant like flowing water. Her hair shimmered silver, under the fading sunlight, long and free, and her skin carried the same faint glow he remembered. But her eyes, those golden eyes, were what made his breath catch in his chest. She stared at him with emotion so raw it pierced through the silence between them. Then, in a trembling voice, she spoke. "Do you remember who I am, human?" she said, her accent heavy but her words clear. "I'm the girl you saved." Ethan froze. His mind spun back to that battlefield, the rubble, the blood, the terrified child clutching his wrist. It couldn't be, but it was. "You—" His voice faltered. "You're alive." She smiled faintly, though her eyes shimmered with tears. "I live because of you. I never forgot." Ethan's heart pounded as he stepped closer. She wasn't a child anymore. She had grown into a woman with regal presence, but the memory of the girl he once saved still lingered in her face. "What's your name?" he asked softly, realizing he never knew. "Lyra," she said. "Princess Lyra of the Aran Dominion." The word princess struck him like a thunderbolt. He had saved royalty without even knowing it. But she didn't carry herself with arrogance. Instead, there was humility, warmth, and something he couldn't name. Trust, maybe, or gratitude. "Why are you here?" Ethan finally asked, his voice cautious. Her smile faded, replaced by a shadow of worry. "Because I need you. My people. They are divided. Some seek peace, but others want war with your kind. I came to warn you, and to ask for your help." Ethan frowned. "Me? I'm no one. I left the military years ago. I fix machines, nothing more." Lyra shook her head firmly. "You are not no one. You saved me when you could have turned away. You risked your life without knowing who I was. That act changed everything for me. It showed me that humanity is not what my people were told. I built my hope on that memory." Ethan looked away, the weight of her words heavy on his shoulders. He had never thought his choice that day would matter beyond saving one child. But here she was standing before him, telling him it meant far more than he ever imagined. "You came all this way," Ethan said quietly. "Just to find me?" Lyra nodded. "I searched for years, and now I am here because time is short. If the wrong voices in my council succeed, fleets will rise against Earth. You may not be a soldier anymore, but you are the proof I need. That peace is possible." Ethan let out a long breath, rubbing the back of his neck. He had wanted nothing more than a quiet life, free from the noise of war. Yet destiny seemed unwilling to let him rest. Before he could reply, a sudden rumble shook the ground. The ship's lights flickered. Lyra turned sharply, her expression tense. "They followed me," she whispered. From above, dark shapes streaked across the sky. Smaller ships, hunters, descended with a screech, their weapons glowing as they locked onto the clearing. Ethan's instincts roared back to life. "Inside!" he shouted, grabbing Lyra's arm. Together they dashed into the alien craft as energy bolts slammed into the ground around them. The ship's hatch sealed shut. Alarms blared in a language Ethan couldn't understand, but Lyra ran to the controls, her hands moving with quick precision. The vessel lifted off, shaking violently as enemy fire struck its shields. Ethan stumbled into the co-pilot's seat, gripping the sides as the ship lurched upward. "What now?" he demanded. Lyra's golden eyes met his, fierce and determined. "Now, human. We fight to live." The ship roared into the night sky, fire chasing at its heels. And in that moment, Ethan realized his quiet life was gone. The past he thought he had left behind had returned, wrapped in silver hair and golden eyes. The girl he once saved was now a princess, and she had come back, not just to thank him, but to pull him into a destiny far greater than he ever wanted. The alien ship tore through the night sky, its silver frame glowing faintly as it escaped the pursuing hunters. Ethan gripped the armrest of his seat, his jaw tight. The sound of plasma fire striking the shields rattled his bones, but the vessel held steady under Princess Lyra's control. She moved her hands swiftly over the controls, her silver hair shimmering in the dim light of the cockpit. Finally, with a sharp turn and a burst of speed, the ship vanished into the dark clouds above. Earth's atmosphere. The pursuing hunters fell behind, their weapons fading into the distance. Lyra let out a long breath of relief, her hands trembling slightly as the alarms quieted. Ethan leaned back in his seat, exhaling slowly. That was too close. Lyra gave a small nod, her golden eyes scanning the stars beyond the glass. They will not stop. Once they know where I am, they will chase me until I am either captured or silenced. Ethan turned toward her, his brow furrowed. Silenced? Why? You're a princess. Don't your people protect you? For a moment, silence filled the cockpit. Lyra's eyes lowered, sadness clouding their glow. When she finally spoke, her voice carried both strength and sorrow. I am not just a princess, Ethan. I am the heir to the Aran Dominion, one of the oldest powers among the stars. My family has ruled for centuries, guiding our people with wisdom. But now the council is fractured. Some see peace with humanity as weakness. They call for war, for conquest, for proving our dominance once again. And those who disagree, she paused, her voice tightening, they are removed, quietly, permanently. Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. You mean your own people want to kill you? She nodded. To them, I am dangerous, because I speak of peace, because I speak of you. Ethan blinked in surprise. Me? Lyra's gaze softened, her golden eyes reflecting the faint glow of the cockpit lights. The day you saved me, I swore I would never forget. I was only a child, but I understood. You could have left me, as others might have. Yet you chose mercy. That act burned itself into my memory. And when I grew older, I carried it into every council meeting, every speech. I told them humanity is not the enemy. I told them of the soldier who risked everything to save a girl who should have been nothing more than an enemy to him. You, Ethan Hayes, became my proof that peace is possible. Ethan stared at her, stunned. He had never imagined that one choice on a ruined battlefield could echo across years and light years, shaping the voice of a princess. I was just doing what felt right, he said quietly. Lyra's lips curved into a faint smile. Sometimes, what feels right can change the fate of worlds. For a long moment, silence hung between them. The hum of the ship's engines was the only sound. Ethan looked out at the endless black of space, stars scattered like dust across the canvas. His life had been simple, quiet, and now, because of a memory, because of her, it was pulled into something far greater. Why come to me? He asked finally. If your council is this divided, why not gather your own allies? Lyra straightened, her posture regal even in the worn seat. Because my words alone are not enough. Many see me as naive, clinging to the kindness of a single human. They mock me, call me foolish. But if I bring you, if I show them that the one who saved me is real, that he is not a myth or a story, then they will have to listen. You are living proof of the humanity I speak of. Ethan shook his head slowly, a humorless chuckle escaping him. So let me get this straight. You want me, a retired soldier, living a quiet life fixing scrap on Earth, to stand in front of alien leaders and somehow convince them not to go to war? Lyra met his doubt with quiet certainty. Not somehow. By being who you are. You do not need to be a hero. You only need to be the man who once chose compassion over hatred. That is more powerful than any weapon. Ethan rubbed his forehead, leaning back. He wanted to argue, to tell her she was wrong, that he wasn't the man she believed him to be. But deep inside, he knew that moment on the battlefield was the most honest thing he had ever done. And maybe she was right. Maybe it mattered more than he could ever imagine. Before he could reply, the ship shook again, though not from weapons fire. This time it was turbulence as they broke through Earth's atmosphere. The stars vanished behind clouds, and soon the dark outline of the ocean stretched beneath them. Lyra adjusted the ship, guiding it toward a small island far off the coast. "We cannot stay near your home," she explained. "It is too dangerous. They will track me here again. But this island is remote, hidden. We can rest and plan." The ship descended smoothly, landing in a grove of tall trees. When the hatch opened, the smell of salt and earth filled the air. Ethan stepped out first, scanning the surroundings before turning back to help Lyra. As she emerged, the moonlight touched her silver hair, making her look almost otherworldly against the dark forest. For a moment, Ethan simply stared, struck by how much she had changed since the child he had saved. She was strong, beautiful, and yet still carried the same kindness in her eyes. They set up a small camp near the shore, the ship's systems camouflaging it from above. Sitting by the fire, Ethan finally asked the question that had been burning in his mind. "What happens if we fail?" Lyra looked at the flames, her expression grave. "If we fail, war will come. The fleets of the Dominion will descend upon Earth, and your world will burn. Millions will suffer, both human and Aaron. That is why I cannot allow failure." Ethan's fists tightened. He had fought in wars before, seen death and ruin. The thought of Earth being dragged into another conflict sickened him. "Then we don't fail," he said firmly. Lyra's eyes lifted to his, shimmering in the firelight. "Together?" Ethan nodded. "Together." For the first time that night, a genuine smile spread across her face. It wasn't the smile of a princess. It was the smile of the girl he had once saved, the one who had trusted him even when everything around them screamed they were enemies. And in that moment, Ethan realized that his quiet life was gone. But maybe, just maybe, something greater had taken its place. The fire on the island crackled softly, but Ethan couldn't rest. He sat near the flames, staring at the stars above. Each one reminded him of how small Earth really was compared to the galaxy beyond. And yet here he was, caught in the center of a storm that could decide whether those stars became allies or enemies. Across the fire, Lyra sat quietly, her silver hair catching the glow of the flames. Her golden eyes looked distant, filled with worry she tried to hide. She held herself like a leader, calm and collected, but Ethan could see the truth. She was afraid, not for herself, but for what was coming. Ethan broke the silence. "You said your council wants war. Do you really think one man can change their minds?" Lyra looked at him, her voice soft but steady. "Not one man alone, but one man who showed mercy when no one else would. That can be a spark, a story powerful, enough to challenge their fear. My people respect strength, but they are not blind to truth. They only need to see it with their own eyes." Ethan leaned back, rubbing the back of his neck. "And what if they don't listen? What if they decide I'm just another soldier with a lucky story?" "Then I will still fight," Lyra said firmly. "But I would rather fight with you than without you." Her words carried a weight Ethan couldn't ignore. She wasn't just asking for help. She was trusting him with her entire mission, her entire dream of peace. Before he could reply, a faint beeping sound came from inside the ship. Lyra stood quickly and moved to check. The screen lit up with alien symbols glowing red. Ethan followed, frowning. "What is it?" Her face tightened. "A transmission, encoded, from the council." The message played, a voice speaking in her language. Ethan couldn't understand the words, but he could read the expression on her face. It was not good. When it ended, she lowered her head. "They know I left. They accuse me of treason. They have already declared me unfit to rule. And—" She hesitated. "They have sent agents to Earth, not just to capture me, to destroy me." Ethan's stomach clenched. "So, they're already here?" "Yes," she whispered. "And if they find us, they will not hesitate." Ethan sighed heavily, running a hand over his face. "Great. So now it's not just your council we're worried about, but assassins on Earth, too." Lyra looked at him, her voice barely above a whisper. "You don't have to stay with me. I would not blame you if you walked away. This is not your burden." Ethan stared at her for a long moment. Then he shook his head. "That's not who I am. I didn't leave you on that battlefield years ago. I'm not leaving you now." A faint smile touched her lips, and for a moment, the weight in her eyes lifted. But peace never lasted long. That night, while Ethan tried to rest, he woke suddenly to the sound of movement. His instincts screamed. He rolled just in time as a sharp blade of blue energy slashed through the air where he had been lying. A figure cloaked in dark armor stood over him, its face hidden beneath a mask. Another shadow moved toward Lyra, who was just rising from her rest. Ethan grabbed a piece of broken metal from the fire pit and swung it hard, striking the attacker's arm. The weapon fell, hissing as it hit the sand. "Go!" Ethan shouted at Lyra, but she didn't run. Instead, she raised her hand, a small device flashing with light. It emitted a piercing sound, and the attackers staggered, clutching their helmets. Ethan seized the moment. He tackled one, wrestling him into the sand, while Lyra kicked away the other's weapon. The struggle was fierce but brief. The attackers, realizing they had lost the advantage, retreated into the darkness, vanishing as quickly as they had come. Breathing heavily, Ethan picked up the fallen blade, its energy humming dangerously. "Assassins," he muttered. "Guess they didn't waste any time." Lyra touched his shoulder, her golden eyes full of worry. "Are you hurt?" He shook his head. "No, but they'll be back, next time with more." She looked at him, her voice trembling but determined. "This is what I meant when I said you were in danger with me. They will stop at nothing. Ethan, this is no longer just about me. They will target you too." Ethan stared at her, then tightened his grip on the weapon. "Then let them come. I've faced worse." But inside, he knew this was different. These weren't random enemies on a battlefield. These were calculated killers sent to end her dream before it could begin. The next morning, they moved again. They couldn't risk staying on the island. Lyra guided the ship into the skies once more, taking them far from the coast to an abandoned orbital station hidden in Earth's shadow. The station was old, covered in dust and silence, but it was safe for now. As they settled inside, Lyra finally told Ethan more of the truth. "The ones chasing us are not only against peace," she explained. "They profit from war. They sell weapons, fuel conflict, and gain power through fear. If peace happens, they lose everything. That is why they want me gone." Ethan frowned. "So it's not about humanity. It's about control." "Exactly," Lyra said. "And unless we stop them, both our worlds will suffer." Ethan paced the room, his hands clenched. "And you think me standing in front of your council will fix that?" She stepped closer, her voice soft but filled with fire. "Not just standing, fighting beside me, showing them you are real, that you are the man who saved a frightened girl when no one else would. That story cannot be silenced. Not if you are there to tell it. Ethan looked at her, her golden eyes locking onto his. For the first time, he truly saw how much she carried. The weight of her people, the risk of betrayal, the fear of failure. Yet she stood tall, unbroken. He exhaled slowly. All right, princess. If I'm really the proof you need, then I'll do it. I'll stand with you. Her expression softened into a smile, one that carried both gratitude and relief. Thank you, Ethan. Together we may yet change everything. Outside, the stars stretched endless and cold. But inside that abandoned station, a fragile alliance burned bright. One human and one alien princess, standing against forces that wanted to drown both worlds in fire. And though Ethan had doubts, one thing was certain. The choices he made now would shape not just his life, but the fate of two civilizations. The abandoned station hung silently above Earth, a relic from an older age of exploration. Dust covered its walls, and the lights flickered weakly when Ethan and Lyra powered it up. But inside, they found safety for a short while, a place to breathe, to plan, and to prepare. Yet Ethan could feel it, like the weight of a storm pressing against his chest. War was coming. He stood near one of the wide observation windows, staring at Earth's blue curve below. It looked so peaceful from here, quiet and untouched. But he knew peace was fragile, and the forces gathering in the dark corners of space would soon shatter it. Behind him, Lyra worked at a console, her golden eyes glowing in the light of the screen. Alien symbols shifted rapidly as she intercepted, transmissions from her people. Finally, she froze, her lips tightening. "They are moving fleets," she whispered. Ethan turned sharply. "Already?" She nodded, her voice heavy. "The Council has given their blessing. Officially, they say it is only a defensive action. But I know the truth. They are preparing to strike Earth, to make an example, to prove humans are weak." Ethan clenched his fists. He had seen wars justified with half-truths before. He had fought in battles where the reasons didn't matter. Only the losses did. He stepped closer, his jaw set. "Then we don't have much time." Lyra looked up at him, her expression determined. "We must act now. The conspirators believe they have silenced me. But if I can send proof of their corruption to the right ears, we can turn others to our side. Not all of my people crave war. Many are tired of it, just as you are." Ethan frowned. "Proof? Do you have it?" Her hand hovered over the console. "Not yet. But I know where it is kept, records hidden inside the Dominion's data vaults. If we reach them, if we can show the Council who profits from this war, they will have no choice but to listen." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "So you want to sneak into the heart of your empire and steal from the people trying to kill you?" Lyra's lips curved faintly, almost a smile. "You saved me once in the middle of war, Ethan Hayes. Do you doubt we can do it again?" He chuckled under his breath, though there was no humor in it. "You're impossible. And you are human," she said softly. "That is why we may yet succeed." Before he could answer, alarms blared across the station. Red lights flashed as the old sensors picked up movement. Ethan rushed to the console and scanned the readings. His stomach dropped. "Ships," he muttered. "3 of them. Coming fast." Lyra's eyes widened. "Assassins?" Ethan shook his head grimly. "No, hunters, armed." The station trembled as the first blast struck its hull. Dust rained down from the ceiling. Lyra jumped to the controls, activating what little power the station still had. Shield generators whined weakly to life, barely holding. "We can't." "Stay here!" Ethan shouted. "Agreed!" Lyra ran toward the ship. Together they sprinted down the corridor as another explosion shook the station. Behind them, fire roared through the walls, chasing them like a beast. They launched, just as the station cracked apart, flames and debris scattering into the void. The hunters swarmed, weapons blazing. Lyra threw the ship into sharp turns, weaving through the wreckage. Ethan gripped the co-pilot's seat, his heart pounding as bolts of energy seared past them. One strike hit their wing, sending the ship spinning. Ethan slammed against the console, his teeth rattling. "We can't outrun them like this." "Then we do not outrun them," Lyra said, her voice fierce. "We outsmart them." She angled the ship toward the largest piece of wreckage, the broken remains of the station's core. The hunters followed, eager for the kill. At the last second, she dove through a narrow gap. The hunters fired, but their blasts ignited the unstable reactor fragments still drifting in the wreckage. A blinding explosion erupted, tearing two of the hunters apart. The third ship veered off, its shields flaring. Lyra pulled them clear, her breaths sharp but steady. Ethan slumped back in his seat, shaking his head. "Remind me never to call you reckless." Her lips curved faintly. "You saved me once. Tonight I return the favor." They flew in silence for a while, leaving the wreckage behind. Ethan studied her profile, lit by the glow of the stars. She carried herself like a leader born for the storm, but he knew the weight she bore was crushing. Finally, he spoke. "So, where do we go now? Straight to these vaults of yours?" Lyra shook her head. "Not yet. We need allies. Just the two of us cannot stand against an empire. But there are those who have been waiting, those who believe in me, even if they could not say it aloud." Ethan leaned back, crossing his arms. "You mean rebels?" Her gaze was steady. "I mean those who still hope." They set course for a hidden world on the edge of Dominion space. Hours stretched into a blur, but when they arrived, Ethan was stunned. The planet was harsh, red deserts and black stone, but tucked in the valleys were hidden camps, lit with quiet fires. And waiting there were hundreds of errand soldiers, engineers, and civilians. When Lyra stepped from the ship, the camp erupted with voices. They knelt, not just in respect, but in relief. For them, she was not just a princess. She was a symbol that hope had not died. Ethan watched her greet them, her words strong and clear. He realized then that this wasn't just about one girl he had saved long ago. This was about something much larger, an entire people clinging to the chance that peace could win over war. That night, Ethan walked among the campfires, hearing stories of those who had lost everything to endless fighting. And when they looked at him, their eyes were curious. They whispered his name, the human who saved the princess. To them, he was not just a soldier. He was part of the story she carried. Later, when he returned to Lyra's side, she looked at him with quiet gratitude. "They believe because of you, too. Never forget that." Ethan shook his head. "I'm just a man who made one choice." She smiled faintly. "And sometimes one choice is enough to start a revolution." But as the fires burned and the rebels prepared, Ethan knew the storm was not far. The Dominion fleets were already moving. The conspirators would strike soon, and when they did, the fragile spark of hope he and Lyra carried would either ignite into light or be crushed under the shadow of war. The hidden camp buzzed with preparation. Soldiers sharpened weapons, engineers repaired old ships, and voices carried through the cold desert night. But more than fear, there was hope in the air, hope that had been gone for too long. All of Val, it centered on Princess Lyra, and beside her, always, was Ethan. Ethan walked among the campfires, listening to the rebels whisper stories of battles lost and families torn apart. Yet when they looked at him, their expressions softened. He was no alien, no soldier of the Dominion, but the human whose act of mercy had brought their princess back to them. To them, he was living proof that peace was not a dream. At dawn, Lyra gathered the leaders of the camp. Ethan stood at her side as she addressed them. "The council prepares for war. she said, her voice clear and steady. They claim it is to defend us, but we know the truth. They seek power. They seek profit. And they will destroy everything in their path, including Earth. Her golden eyes swept across the crowd. But we will not let them. We will show them the truth. We will show them that peace is stronger than fear. The rebels roared their agreement. For the first time in years, their voices rose not in despair, but in unity. Ethan leaned toward her. You speak like someone who's already won. She gave him a faint smile. Hope is the first victory, but the true battle lay ahead. That evening, they set course for the Dominion's core world, where the council chamber stood, a vast citadel of crystal and steel orbiting a golden star. To reach it, they had to pass through fleets of warships already gathered, their weapons gleaming like knives in the dark. The rebels flew in scattered formations, drawing the attention of the fleets. Lyra's ship, carrying Ethan, slipped through. The chaos toward the council station. The rebels would not win this fight, but they did not need to. Their purpose was to give Lyra and Ethan the chance to deliver the truth. Inside the council chamber, silence fell as Lyra entered. Tall figures in robes of shimmering fabric turned in shock. Many had believed her dead or silenced. Yet here she stood, regal and unbroken, with a human at her side. Gasps filled the hall. Murmurs spread like fire. One of the counselors rose sharply. You dare return here, traitor? Lyra's voice rang out. I dare, because I carry the truth. She stepped forward, placing a small device on the center podium. With a hum, holographic images filled the chamber, secret transmissions, financial records, and shadowed faces. The conspirators' dealings revealed themselves for all to see. Weapons sold in secret, fleets deployed without approval, plans to ignite war for their own gain. The chamber erupted with shouts. Some counselors cried out in rage, others in denial. The evidence was undeniable, and then Lyra gestured to Ethan. This is Ethan Hayes, the human soldier who once saved my life on a battlefield where others would have left me to die. I told you his story, but you called it fantasy. Now he stands before you alive. Proof that humanity is not our enemy. Proof that mercy exists even in the heart of war. All eyes turned to Ethan. He felt the weight of their gaze like a mountain pressing down on him. He was no politician, no leader, just a man who had made one choice years ago. But now that choice had carried him here, to the heart of an empire. He took a deep breath. I don't know much about your politics, he said, his voice rough, but steady. I'm not here to give speeches. I'm here because once I saw a child trapped under rubble and I couldn't walk away. That's it. That's the whole story. And if that one moment means something to you, then maybe peace is possible. Maybe you don't have to see humans as enemies. Maybe you just need to remember that we're all people, wanting the same thing. To live, to protect, to hope. The chamber fell silent. Ethan's words were simple, but they struck deeper than polished speeches ever could. One counselor rose, trembling. If what she shows is true, then we have been led by liars. Another shouted back, but the tide was already turning. Voices clashed, arguments flew, but one thing became clear. The conspirators could no longer hide. Guards entered the chamber, seizing those whose corruption was now laid bare. The council divided, but the truth had broken their unity of war. Still, not all were convinced. A faction of generals outside the chamber launched their fleets, determined to strike Earth regardless of the council's decision. From the chamber windows, Ethan and Lyra watched the ships move into formation. The storm of war was still raging. Lyra turned to him, her expression fierce. This is the final moment. If we fail now, everything burns. Ethan met her gaze. Then we don't fail. Together, they rushed back to the ship. The rebels were already fighting in orbit, holding back the general's fleets with everything they had. Lyra's ship cut through the chaos, broadcasting the truth across every channel, every ship. Ethan's voice joined hers, calling out to soldiers on both sides. "You've been lied to," Lyra cried. "The war is not for our survival, it is for their greed." "And if you still think humanity is your enemy," Ethan added, his voice strong, "look at me. I was your enemy once, but I saved her, and now I stand with her. Don't fight for those who only use you. Fight for the chance to choose something better." The message spread like fire. Ships wavered in their formations. Crews muttered, officers hesitated, and then, slowly, fleets began to turn. Not against Earth, but against the conspirators' generals. The battle shifted. Explosions lit the skies as loyalists and rebels clashed, but now the tide had changed. With the truth revealed, many no longer wished to fight. One by one, ships powered down their weapons, drifting away from the conflict. Finally, the last of the conspirators' fleet surrendered. Silence returned to the void. Inside the council chamber, the vote was cast. The war was ended before it began. When it was over, Lyra stood before her people, her voice calm and strong. "We were brought to the edge of ruin by fear, but today we step back from that edge. We will not let greed decide our future. We will choose unity, and we will choose peace." The chamber roared with approval. For the first time in generations, the Dominion had spoken not for conquest, but for hope. Later, as the stars glimmered quietly outside, Ethan and Lyra stood together on the balcony of the council station. The weight of what had happened settled on them, but so did something else: relief. "You changed everything," Ethan said softly. Lyra shook her head. "We did. You were my proof, my strength." He gave a small smile. "And you were the girl I couldn't walk away from." Her golden eyes shimmered as she looked at him. "Then perhaps fate was kind to us both." The night was silent. The storm of war finally passed. And though challenges still lay ahead, one thing was clear. The bond between a human soldier and an alien princess had rewritten the future of two worlds. Together, they had turned a single act of mercy into a legacy of peace.